So, a very good day, good evening, good morning to you, wherever you might be. And welcome to yet another set of conversations we have with series of industry leaders here on the ET Cutting Chai Conversations. My name is Karan Karai, and I'll be taking you down this canal of conversation. We have with us Vana, who is a renowned industry leader. He is a CIO. He's been there, done that, and has probably forgotten more than you've ever done. The idea underlying this entire series is to try and understand what makes a leader rather than try and delve into the business side of the equation to really ponder about the harder aspect of things. So we take things a little bit more slowly, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more lazy here on Cutting Chai. So sit back, relax, unwind, and grab a cup of your favorite cuppa as we chat with Vana about all things that went into making him the person, the professional that he is today. Vana, thank you so much for being here with us and on
Pleasure.
ET Cutting Chai Conversations.
Pleasure, Karan. Good to connect and be a part of this event.
Right. Of course, first up, I have to really pick your brain and ask you, because leadership is such a fluid, such a loosely coined thing. What does leadership mean to you?
It's an interesting one. There are so many different definitions that textbooks give you, but I do have some, fairly strong views on leadership. And to me, first of all, the starting point is, to be a good leader, one has to be a good human being. I think that's really where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Becomes very important, and I personally place a lot of value on leadership integrity. One of the things that I hold very, very close to my heart.
Okay.
And leadership integrity is not about saying that I will not do anything which is immoral, unethical, or unlawful. That's not what it is. It's I think about being both honest to yourself and to the people who work with you. It's about being true to your word and living what you preach 100% of the time, not 99 but 100. I think that's what leadership is all about, because one of the things that I've realized over the years is when you're in leadership positions, you are constantly watched. People hang on to everything that you do, everything that you say. So obviously you will have to be very mindful of that, and and I think if you're not genuine, I think you get caught out and lose your credibility. So I think a good leader, obviously, it's all about I think leadership integrity, in my opinion, and being an honest, genuine person and being straight with people. I am a big believer in calling a spade, and most of my team who work with me will hear good things or bad things straight on their face with no hidden agendas. So that's my take on leadership, and it's not I think it's not positional. It's not based on your organizational position. I think it's more about the respect that you command from people who work with you, who work for you, who work with you, who work above you, across the board. So that is sort of my 2 cents of wisdom on leadership.
Right. So, switching gears a bit, over the past year has been trying for everybody at a personal level, but what did you perhaps miss the most over the course of the entire year that's gone by, has been behind us?
I think I've really missed the buzz of being at work, when I've been working from home. I think I hear so much, talk and articles about how effective people are and how organizations are increasingly looking at a permanent work from home, or are looking at a reduced workforce in the office and so on. While I've done a fair bit of work from home myself, even before the pandemic set in my various roles, especially with some of the multinational organizations. Uh, Somehow, there is a buzz to being at work, and sometimes you just walk down the corridor in your office and you stop by, talk to a couple of people, pick their brains. You get some ideas, then you come back, you build it out. I mean, that whole energy buzz is missing. So I mean, I must admit, I've been in office almost every day for the last 3 months, because we've been sort of getting part of our teams to come in, and and obviously I've got absolutely no locus standi to tell them to come if I don't go. So I've been going pretty much every day. But like I said, I've missed the excitement and the buzz that is there when you're in office. I think there's a different energy when you're surrounded by 100 people on the floor and you're sort of working with them. So that's really what I've missed.
Plus, one of the things as an extension of that, really, I think I've noticed at a personal level is that things got a little bit too transactional when you're all working remotely. Because even if you know the person all too well and you need something to get done, what happens is you just pick up the phone, you ask for it to get done, and boom, you're done. Whereas in office, it's more of a conversation leading up to whatever work you want to get done. So there's a little bit more for human emotive connect that's at play when you're in person within the office confines. And that's something that's I think that's really been missing from the workplace over the course of the last year. Um, Personally speaking, again, Vana, work is obviously taking up a lot of our attention, our time, whether we are in the digital field, whether we are in all things technological or not. Did you manage to work in enough time for yourself, or did you find that that whole personal professional divide was just completely shattered by the demands of the pandemic?
I think in the initial stages of the pandemic, when we started working from home, I'd say probably from March, April onwards, right up to maybe July, August, it was a bit, hectic in the sense that, I think the areas were blurred between personal and professional time. For two reasons. Obviously, one, the work does tend to get a bit hectic. It was that phase, where I guess there was a lot more uncertainty at that point compared to where we are today. But more importantly, I think everybody knew that the other person had nothing else to do. I mean, you knew that the person was available, to take your calls, to attend to what you wanted to. I think it got to a stage where maybe many of us started taking the other person's time for granted,
Right, right.
which was, I think, sort of an avoidable side effect of the pandemic work from home situation. But it was tough. But I think we kind of gradually dealt with it, and but the flip side to it is work went on. I mean banks were still working, banks were serving customers. It was still happening. So I guess there was a positive to it. But the initial phase, I think, was a bit sort of tight. But yes, after that, I've sort of gradually settled into a routine in terms of getting a little bit of a balance between work life and personal life. And I think it also coincided with the start of the F1 season in July. So then you have to find time for yourself. So yeah, I think things are pretty much back on track as far as the balance is concerned at the moment. Can't really complain.
So that actually brings me into my next question. I, of course, know of your love for sports. You watch cricket, you love soccer or football, as we like to call it. We watch badminton, there's F1. So, what sport would you say is your favorite and why is it Formula One?
Uh, uh, I mean, I must admit, I'm a sort of a diehard F1 fanatic, and I've been watching F1 or following F1, I think, for the best part of 35 years now. Ever since I was a young kid. And what really amazes me about the sport, is two things. One, contrary to popular belief, most people think that F1 is you get into a car, just step on the accelerator and just drive fast, which we know is not the case. One, it's an incredibly high tech sport. I think the amount of technology that goes into it is just unbelievable, if you ask me. And I think probably passenger cars are, what you see in passenger cars today was probably there in F1 maybe 15, 20 years back. So it's, I think the technology is fascinating, but it's also a high precision sport. I think it's a sport where I mean 1/10 of a second is massive. It's 1/100th of a second makes a huge difference. So I think it's a very, very high precision sport where the drivers have got to be absolutely precise in terms of where you brake, at what point you brake, at what point you accelerate, what gear you drive in. So all of those things, I think sort of just I mean just fascinates me. So it's just one of those things that I love. And while I watch cricket, of course, needless to say, being an Indian, if you don't watch cricket, then something's wrong with you. But yeah, F1 is still it continues to be my favorite sport.
There's also, the whole strategic aspect of F1 where it's not just about being flat out. Sometimes you gotta take it slow, you gotta take it easy, know when the other person is backing off. So that's when you really put the hammer down. Are there any real parallels you can draw between, say, F1 and teams or working in an organization or strategy for that matter?
It's interesting you bring this up. So one of my sort of favorite videos that I show in a lot of my team meetings is I think it must have come out on YouTube probably a couple of years back. I can't remember which year, but there was a Ferrari pit stop, which was a sub 2 second pit stop, I think 1.94 seconds or something like that. And there's a great video on YouTube of, an overhead of how, the whole thing happens.
I
Uh,
remember that.
yeah, so it's fascinating because it's teamwork at its very best. You've got, I think, close to 20 plus people who are sort of changing tires in under 2 seconds. When the car is running. A great example of teamwork, and I always say that it's even if one sort of chain in the link fails, then it has an impact on the result of the race. And there are races which are lost and won due to sort of exceptional or botched up pit stops. So I think it's a fabulous example of teamwork in action. And while most people tend to remember probably Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel and Ayrton Senna, I think there's a whole army of people who are working behind the scenes, who are delivering the results. So I think it's a great example for teamwork. But the other thing that F1 also, the other lesson that I take away, life in general, if I look at some of the F1 examples, there are lessons to be learned in life. And the example that I keep always quoting is probably the greatest example of bravery that I've seen. When Niki Lauda crashed, at the Nürburgring back in '76, I think it was, and I think he was in the car for 45 seconds, before he was dragged out, and his lungs were completely were burnt. He was admitted to hospital, and there's a very interesting story that he narrates. He says he had this blurred vision when he came to consciousness, and he saw a priest sitting there and reading the last rites. Obviously, people had given up, on him surviving. And he said that the only thought running in his mind was that he wouldn't go to sleep because he felt if he slept, he would not wake up again. So, so he went through that entire, episode, and 6 weeks later was back in a Formula One car, driving. So, I think it's one of the greatest examples of courage that that one would see. So, yeah, a lot of life lessons to be learned from F1, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually it's incredible even by today's medical science standards to be burnt like that to that extent and then come back within 6 weeks, not just to be active as a human being, but to active at that level of sport, that level of athleticism is really something else.
Absolutely.
Um,
Truly
so
special.
then, yeah, so then I imagine you've seen a lot of the incredible Formula One cars, like you've seen McLaren's turbocharged monster from the 80s, 86,
Yes.
87, the one that Senna won with. There was the Williams fantastic car that was there in 92, 93. The
That's right.
McLarens that were there in 1999. There's the Ferrari that came shortly after, and the Renault as well. If I had to ask you to, pick your top two, three memorable cars for whatever reason, because of their technological feats, or maybe because of the way they sounded, or what they achieved, or which cars would those be?
I must admit, I'm not a fan of the hybrid era. I think I loved the
Yeah.
F1 cars with the noise, where you had to wear earplugs at the race.
Yeah.
And I've been to a couple of them. I've been to the Singapore Grand Prix, the pre-hybrid era, and also Bahrain a couple of times, and Abu Dhabi, and so on. So, and all of these were the pre-hybrid era. So I love the noise that comes with F1. So I'd say two or three cars of obviously the McLaren Honda of the late 80s, the one that Senna won his championships in. That was one of my favorites. I loved the Red Bull of 2010 to 2013 because Sebastian Vettel is one of my favorite drivers, continues to be one of my favorite drivers. So that was another car that I loved, and the late 90s McLaren, which Mika Hakkinen won his
Yeah.
championships in. And I must tell you this incident. So I was in Bahrain many years ago watching an F1 race, and we were coming back to Dubai. I was living in Dubai at that time, and we were coming back to Dubai, and saw Mika Hakkinen at the airport. So we kind of spoke to him and asked him if we could take a picture with him. These were the selfie days when mobile phones with cameras were not too popular. But we asked him, and we weren't sure if he said yes or no, because he speaks with a fairly thick Finnish
Yeah,
accent. And he was saying, "What are you waiting for? Come on, come on!" And then we took a picture with him. So that's part of my collection, and it was quite an incredible experience, I must say.
Man, and I'm just very envious because I got into F1 just as the black and silver arrows started to really dominate, with Hakkinen and Coulthard starting to really, really come good. So for you to then say that is something that really, just makes me feel very, very envious of you. I'm a big, big Hakkinen fan. Was back then. I used to have raging debates with my friends over, Hakkinen versus Schumacher. And I used to always just come back and say, if you need somebody to win the race, you go with Schumacher. You want the fastest man on track, You got to go with Hakkinen. It's as simple
Absolutely.
as
Uh, I think the Finns are a different breed, in my opinion. Whether it's
yeah. They're just crazy. They just don't have
absolutely,
that whole fear factor in their head.
absolutely, very, very true.
And even though they're just so disconnected, at a social level, they just make for great viewing. Raikkonen, you're talking this guy, you're talking so many other Finns for that matter. Even outside of
Absolutely,
this, you're talking rally racing for that matter.
very much so. And again, Keke Rosberg was another Finn who was phenomenally quick.
Yeah,
So yeah, there have been quite a few, I must say. Yeah, that's right.
whole lot of them.
Yeah.
So again, another question. I'd have to put you on the spot for this one. Favorite. I know. I mean, we had that conversation. I know that Senna is your favorite. If you had to pick across eras, even though it's very, very difficult to compare guys like say, you're talking Clark, you're talking Fangio, you're talking Schumacher, Senna. If you had to pick one driver, to be your star driver in your fantasy F1 team, the best driver of all time, who would you pick?
I'm biased. Yeah, I mean, it would have to be Ayrton Senna without a shadow of doubt. He's just my favorite. But it depends again. I mean, it depends on the car. If you wanted a driver to get the most out of a car, which was probably not so good, then Senna was the man. But if you had a fabulous car, and you wanted somebody to just sort of, step in and percentage drive it to a win, I would probably pick even either a Schumacher or even a Lewis Hamilton. I think
Actually,
they've done
valid.
exceptionally well with really good cars. But if you want to sort of, grab the car and sort of push it through the field to somewhere in front, then
Yeah.
I think the two drivers who are capable of doing that are either Ayrton Senna and the other one I'd put my money on is Fernando Alonso. I think he was another guy who could get the most out of the car. So yeah, these are the two guys that I would pick. Though my all-time, I mean, I wouldn't say all-time, my current favorite continues to be Sebastian Vettel. I'm a big fan of Vettel.
Yeah, he got a little bit of a raw deal. I hope he does better at Aston Martin. Definitely do.
There's
Professional.
again a life's lesson there, I feel, Karan. I think just looking at the way he's dealt with it during the course of last year, not one, bad word about Ferrari, not one, abuse or, he's never really let go in the press. I think the way he's maintained his composure.
A lot of dignity in that. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he's carried himself with so much dignity. I mean, that's something that I really admire. And yeah, because I think in life and in corporate life in particular, you do go through, situations like this. So I think, yeah, there are lessons to be learned from that as well.
Very true. Very true. So, as an IT leader, coming back a little bit onto the business track of things, because somebody, if they're tuning in right now, maybe wondering why have we suddenly become a racing channel?
Quite true.
As an IT leader, what are the big challenges you've seen over the course of 2020? What are the big ones that jump out at you?
I think the key thing has been, to sort of uh, keep things going during difficult times, and at the same time continue to, manage your teams remotely and continue to inspire them to deliver what they're supposed to. I think the whole, work from home where you're leading, sort of reasonably large teams is a challenge, and that's something that many of us have had to sort of adapt to. So I think that's been the huge sort of challenge, I'd say, in 2020 with the pandemic. And but I think after the, like I said earlier, after the initial sort of focus or the initial sort of phase where we had challenges, I think we've people have figured out, I think at large, a lot of the leaders that I talk to in my peer group as well, I think have figured out how to handle it now. And you know, everybody keeps talking of the new normal. I just hope we get back to a stage where we're still back in offices. I mean, most of us, many, or should I say, many of us are. But I think it will be nice to see everybody back in office, sooner than later.
So then, what are your big two, three big action points like looking forward, like going forward into 2021 that you've got to get ready, you've got to set just right for the organization and probably even beyond for industries at large?
I think for the industry at large, uh, the big thing will be how do organizations adopt to digital in a big way. I think digital, because I think now it's just the whole digital penetration has increased exponentially in the last 12 months or so. So how are organizations going to deal with it, and how are the industries going to deal with it? I think is going to be something that we got to see how it pans out during the course of the year. But I think that will be the priority for most of us, in technology, in terms of how much and how quickly can you drive digital penetration within your customer segments and also within your, within your user segments. I think both of that will be absolutely crucial.
Right. So it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Vana, about business, about tech, about all things F1.